Welcome to the Jack Mountain Bushcraft Podcast, episode 62.
Welcome to the Jack Mountain Bushcraft Podcast with your host, Jack Mountain Bushcraft School founder and Master Maine Guide, Tim Smith.
I'm your host, Tim Smith. I'm a registered Master Maine Guide, and in 1999 I founded the Jack Mountain Bushcraft School. We help people become more skilled, more knowledgeable, more experienced, and more confident outdoors by using traditional skills, a few simple tools, and field-based experience. Whether you're looking to go from city slicker to competent outdoor professional, want to experience a remote expedition, or just want to learn a few new outdoor skills, we've got you covered. You can check out the show notes to this and all of our podcasts at blog.jackmtn.com. When you're there, click on the podcast button. And if you enjoy the show, please leave us a review on iTunes. Lastly, the best way to keep up with our programs and trips is to join our email newsletter, and you can do that at jmbnews.com.
Welcome back to another episode of the Jack Mountain Bushcraft Podcast. This is episode 62. I'm your host, Tim Smith, here with Christopher Russell in the Guide Shack on a Friday morning before we start our day, and this has sort of been our routine as of late, is to get up a little early and record something before we get caught up in the busyness of the day.
Yeah.
So you had a great addition to your living situation this past week.
I got a stove, and I'm amazed I even crawled out of that tent to come up here and record this.
So, yeah. It's northern Maine. It's the 17th of May, and it was like 1 degree above freezing last night. Like we're barely out of winter. I know some of you listening to this may be in more southern climates, and you're already dealing with, days where the air conditioner is probably kicking on for 8 or more hours a day. And we still have snow. The Masardis glacier is still super strong.
You should explain the Masardis glacier.
The Masardis glacier, about a half a mile from the field school here down the road, is in a big farmer's field. There's an area with a big, it doesn't get any southern exposure. And there's a big hill, and the snow piles up there, and, it's the 17th of May, and there's still a couple of feet of snow in the Masardis glacier.
Yep.
The climate here, in one of the old Northeast Sporting Journal books, they talk about the shortest growing season in Maine, and it was right here at Squapan Junction where they said 77 frost-free days a year.
Yeah,
right.
We had two or 3 days ago
280 plus days with frost a year.
God, I love Maine. And two or 3 days ago we had our first wet weather fire exercise, and I woke up and started walking up the hill to get them started on it, and it started snowing.
Yeah,
and sleeting.
Mid to late May. It's challenging. It is challenging.
Yeah.
We were out yesterday. We had our first day out on the river, so we covered 6 miles. We went to downtown Masardis and floated back to the field school. And just a 12 to 15 mile an hour north wind. It was probably 41 degrees Fahrenheit. And for most of the way, we had a driving rain.
Yeah.
So it was like perfect conditions for hypothermia.
Yeah.
Super happy that nobody went for a swim, because that would have meant, pull over right away, get a blazing fire going.
Yeah, it was chilly.
All those things. But, for the spring semester especially, we no one's ever going to want to do the spring semester after hearing this.
Well,
But for the spring semester especially, we've got a bunch of trips to go and do, so we keep trying to push the envelope and get out on the water, but the weather has just been cold.
Yeah.
So it's hard to get, once people have some experience, it's no big deal to be out on the water. But to do those initial few days of poling, standing in a canoe through rips, things like that, where people are more likely to swim, it's hard to get it done when it's been so cold.
Yeah, it's been really challenging, the weather and stuff this spring.
So it's no big deal doing stuff at the field school, like woods stuff, craft stuff. No big deal with the colder weather. It's just introducing people to the fine art of canoeing. When it's barely above freezing and the water's barely above freezing. That's a challenge. It's actually a benefit, I think, to be in the woods. because we can be in the thickest woods ever with no smudge pots now. There's no bugs yet.
Yeah.
So, we can be doing just about everything in the woods, and there's a huge benefit to that. Because once the bugs come out, they're hungry. They haven't eaten since September, so they're going to be, real hungry and real anxious to get some human blood into them. So we're thankful they have not been out yet. But yeah, wrapping up week 3, Friday morning of week 3 of the 9-week semester.
It is flying.
And we're right where we want to be. We've got our big checklist of everything that has to go into the course. And we've cranked out canoe paddles so far. We've cranked out a bunch of other smaller crafts. People are living in their first big shelter that they've made. We've pressed all the green plants that have come up.
Which is like 3.
Yeah.
It's so cold.
But yeah, so I don't know. The with it being so late like this, though, when the sun does come out, stuff's gonna pop in about a day. Looking out across the pond right now, the aspens are all kind of budding out.
Yep.
So yeah, one warm day, and we'll probably get like 3 inches of leaf growth.
Yeah. Which
will
be great. It'll be so nice to see things green up after such a long winter.
Yeah, for sure. Like the fields are already green. Yeah. One of the things we do early spring is great for the grass cordage, grass mats, because you've got all the dead grass from last year. But there's an expiration date on it, and that expiration date is happening right now, where that stuff, once the snow melts and it gets exposed and it's moist, it breaks down really quickly and is replaced by green grass.
Yeah.
So, this is a great time to harvest stuff to make a simple quickie grass rope. Great time for friction fire tinder bundles and spark-based fire-making tinder bundles, because there's dry, dead grass everywhere. Pretty soon, in late spring and summer, that's not as easy of a project to pull off. You have to do a lot more work to process inner barks of cedars and aspen, or maybe harvest some grass and let it dry out in the sun. But right now we're sort of at the very end of that. Hey, everything is super flammable, which is why all the, there's often big fire warnings in the Northeast or in northern Maine in early spring.
I'm curious if you plan that as a segue into what we're going to talk about, because it takes a pretty good understanding of the rhythms of a place you live to know that, and that's why we're here. Or did you just happen to stumble upon
Dumb
that?
luck.
I like it.
Dumb luck.
That's how we got this far.
So yeah, today, after we get through our kind of rambling intro here, we're going to talk about how to know a place.
Yeah.
But a couple other timely current events things. Number one, we're both very sad this morning.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
We looked on the magic internet phone this morning and learned that Grumpy Cat, the cat of a million photos on the internet,
stole all our hearts.
A million, is it a meme or a meme?
I don't know.
Okay, well,
I think meme.
We learned that Grumpy Cat sadly has passed away. So we're dedicating this episode to Grumpy Cat.
Yes, we are.
Who may not be there with us in person anymore, but will be there in our hearts and spirit forever.
Grumpy Cat definitely lives in both of our hearts, for sure, at the very least.
Yes, if I were a cat, I would probably be Grumpy Cat. Or my cat, Pudding, at home, because he doesn't do anything at all. He just lays around. So Grumpy Cat, we miss you.
Yep.
And we'll
have fun in that big litter box in the sky.
We'll see you again on the other side.
Yep.
I had a meeting this past week, a totally different topic here, switching gears. We are definitely on track for offering college credit through the University of Maine at Presque Isle starting this fall, with this fall wilderness bushcraft semester. I went in and met with the team at UMPI the other day, and they were super excited about our new digital assessment system. It dovetails really well with what we're trying to accomplish with this partnership. So that's definitely in process. The T's are being crossed, the I's are being dotted, and we're super, super excited about it.
Yeah.
I'm going to be listed as an adjunct professor. And for some of you listening out there, also know that I am a full bird Kentucky colonel. So starting in September,
I just realized
I will only answer to Professor Colonel.
But when you sign it, can it be Colonel, like a popcorn kernel? Professor Colonel?
That's interesting.
Just
no. There's no way I
Dang.
can do that.
Oh, it'd be funny. There's so many levels to this.
There is a lot of levels to it. But we're super excited for that partnership. Just another example of the hard work that it takes to get things done, in that there's a big difference between professional, documented, standards-based training and just kind of going around and sitting in the woods. And it's been, when I started this business 20 years ago, when I was thinking about it back in 1998, when I was thinking about what we were going to do and what we were going to try to accomplish, and then we actually started in 1999, part of the long-term goal was to legitimize traditional outdoor living skills as part of outdoor education. And at the time, outdoor education, especially at the university level, was focused all around mountaineering gear, rock climbing, things of that nature.
Adventure stuff, right?
Where the outdoors were sort of used as a backdrop for people-based things and interactions.
Right.
And with my background in anthropology, I was really interested in how native cultures had lived on the land for millennia, right? And the skills and the techniques and the hard skills and the ecological knowledge that went into that, which was a totally different realm from what university level outdoor education was. And it's super exciting. I mean, a 20-year overnight success, right?
Hang on, that doesn't work.
That's what it's a joke.
Oh.
But, the idea is it took us 20 years, but we're finally kind of realizing that dream, which feels really good.
Yeah.
And is super excited, and part of the thing that drove me to want to accomplish that was always my interest as a child. And at the time, it wasn't a big popular industry like the bushcraft, air quotes, industry at this point. But that's what I was interested in. I wanted to learn how those cultures lived off the country. And, over those 20 years, I think 19 years ago, I started doing trips up north with David and Anna Bosom and learning about the Cree lifestyle and the Cree culture. And that's been a huge boom to, kind of continuing to fuel that dream and desire. And I think maybe one of the biggest changes over time was, as a kid, or if you're just getting into this, you think of those things that allow cultures to live that way as skills. And the word skills is still thrown about quite a bit, this skill, that skill. But, if you practice it every day and it's part of your lifestyle, it's a culture. It's not skills. So, again, super excited to be working with UMPI, super excited to see that partnership take off, and just super excited about that whole thing, right? It's always great to get external validation. Never hurts. No. And we're happy to have it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great to me to see that, like you were saying, like learning how other cultures lived on the land previously, and not just to learn that in sort of a way where you know a lot of facts about it, but you've actually done it and you're like, oh, this really works. It's not just a line drawing or, the ramblings of some person who found a stone and thought that maybe it was a primitive iPod or something, like
a primitive iPod.
Yeah.
Is that that would take two stones because you'd have to bang them together.
I'm making the point that with most, when you're basing off artifacts and drawings, a lot of times it's totally up to interpretation.
Okay.
Whether or not it would work or not.
But again, for an audible thing, it would be two stones that you would have to bang together.
Would that be called rock music? The coffee just hit me.
Nice. I didn't major in geology, but I listened to a lot of rock music.
Oh yeah, me too. So the premise for what we want to talk about today was brought on by, and that's the whole like making a place your home.
How to know a place.
Yeah, was that there was a student that on this semester who walked up to me about 2 weeks in and said, as this course goes on, I'm realizing that this is really just skills to learn how to make a place your home. And what he meant by that wasn't that we're not teaching anybody to build a cabin or anything like that, but we're showing you a set of systems that allow you to know a lot about the land that you're living on or around. And that's something that people in the modern world don't I don't even think about often, you know. It doesn't, the bird might be pretty outside, but it doesn't really affect you if you know what it is or what it does.
Yeah, we're so insulated from the realities of the natural world these days, where we live in climate-controlled housing.
Yep.
We wake up, we take a hot shower, by turning a knob, regardless of what time of year it is. Jump in a climate-controlled car to a climate-controlled office, spend the day there, and then head back home, and, you know, everything's climate-controlled. And we don't have to know anything about the natural world to live in a place these days.
Yeah.
And what the students here are experiencing is, hey, there's no climate control. There are no engines that are going to do anything and get you anywhere. Essentially, you are living in the environment, and your body is the only engine that you have.
Yeah.
So the way that we accomplish this on the course is we have several components to that. Number one is the academic component, and students are spending late nights in the library doing background studies on natural history, keeping weather journals, doing studies on mammals, plants, fish, birds, soon to be insects. So there's the academic component, but there's also the experiential component, which is where we're actually out on the land.
Yeah.
If it rains, you get wet. If you fall in the water, you get even wetter. And then you have to be responsible for drying your stuff out, and whatever. But, you know, there is no secret sauce to any of this. We say, throughout the course, that the secret sauce around here is paying attention to small details and changes over time. And I think that's the thing, is that in the modern world, we don't have to pay attention. There's no benefit, really, to paying attention unless you're individually interested. You know, if I lived in downtown Portland, Maine, you know, I'd wake up in an apartment and I would go to work and I would come home and feed myself and do what I needed to do. But unless I was really interested, I probably wouldn't notice the birds,
right,
you know, on my way into the office. I probably wouldn't notice the plants in the park. I probably wouldn't notice those things. Whereas here, we've, you know, designed the course in such a way that it's part of the lifestyle to notice those things.
Well, and so an exercise that I think demonstrates that really well is when we get into navigation, students have to make a map of a section of the field school that we designate for them. And a few semesters ago, we had two students that were around the same age, and just had sort of different mentalities towards their studies. They're at the actual academic side of it. And what that meant was that when they went and recorded the map, one student who had put in a little more work on knowing the plants around here, his map was much more detailed, to the point where, you know, he had designated an aspen grove or a pine grove, a fir grove. Whereas opposed to the other one, it was a line drawing that you could probably get around with. But this other person had through knowing the academic stuff previously, had been able to devote a lot more attention to detail and record that detail in a way that, you know, if I had to pick one of those maps, I'd want the one that had a lot more detail in it to navigate with, rather than the one that was, you know, you could get by, but I wouldn't want to try. And I think that says something about the mentality that I hope students take away up here, is that you pay attention to little details in a way that you probably haven't before in most of life, and that goes back home with you. And the map exercise forces people to do that. And that's it. That's what I got.
That's good.
Yeah.
I'm glad you clarified pine grove versus fir grove. One of my hugest pet peeves is when people refer to every evergreen as a pine. Or they always say pine boughs when they mean fir or spruce or something.
To be totally honest, the reason it happens is because I looked out across the lake and there's a white pine.
There's no white pine over there.
Oh my God.
That's a spruce. You are right now the most annoying person in the world to me. Like, you're doing what I just said I hated.
Really? Am I?
Yeah. Oh my God.
What would encourage a person to want to do that?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
He's just taking advantage of me. Last weekend, my kids visited up here, and children are a blessing. Children are a lovely thing, but they're also dirty little disease vectors. So I caught this wicked cold and kind of been down and out for a few days with, not getting great sleeps and stuff. So I think, I'm at my low point here, and you're taking advantage of that. Just trying to twist the knife in my back.
I wouldn't deign to comment on that statement.
Oh, God.
But yeah, I think that there's something to that attention to detail that students should strive to take away from this course.
other aspects of the experiential side of learning a place, something that we have students do during the course is go out to a sit spot once or twice a day. And that's where during a course like this, or a course not like this, you spend a lot of time with other people, you spend a lot of time interacting with other people, and the sit spot is a time, I refer to it as the little solo, where you can go out, let the cares of the day slip away, and instead of talking and making a bunch of noise, sit quietly and observe the natural world. And it's a pretty neat experience in that over time, if you go to the same place, the animals there and the birds and stuff, they get used to your presence. First couple times you go, you're a big outsider and they don't want anything to do with you. And eventually you're part of their routine and they go about their general daily business. So especially around here with like the whiskey jacks and some of the birds, they'll land, if not on you, right next to you. Yeah. If you're not making jerky movements or anything. And
the red squirrels will beat you up and steal your lunch.
They will attack. Not necessarily attack.
No, but they're not afraid of much.
They're not afraid of much. So, but it's a neat experience to go out and observe nature and especially observe changes in nature. A lot of times what we're looking for are the changes. So, for example, when people are keeping a weather log, we're looking at the weather, and if it's sunny with a northwest wind today, and it's sunny with a northwest wind tomorrow, logging that isn't super interesting. What we're really looking at is what are the signs that a change is going to take place. Mm-hmm. So, and with regards to sit spots, maybe it's that there weren't moose tracks across the stream yesterday, and there were today. So, it allows you to sort of put a timestamp on a lot of those things.
Yeah, well, we started when you were talking about the grass, right? That's a rhythm or a pattern that you notice when you live somewhere long enough. And I think that the seeing things that are interesting happen once that pattern's sort of ingrained in your brain, and then the changes to that pattern or rhythm are what stand out. The other day, I was walking out the red trail and on our property and saw a bunch of pretty fresh moose scat and looked up and then scared a cow moose, and she just, we both looked at each other for a second and both ran away. And I probably wasn't more than 25 yards from her, and which is, not a common thing, but I might have walked face first into her if I hadn't seen this thing in the middle of the trail and noticed it. And that's something that, when I first started doing this stuff, it never would have occurred to me to look at that and think that way, which is a cool thing to take away, and I hope students are as well.
I'll link this story in the show notes, but one of the really cool stories we have about sit spots, I think it was like 2003, maybe 2004, in New Hampshire. We ran a semester that was February, March, April. Excuse me, I'm still getting over that cold. And a guy named Peter, great guy, super motivated student, went to the same sit spot. It was either 39 or 41 days in a row. And, every day he'd go there, he said he would see fisher tracks, and there was a big kind of blowdown, and he saw the fisher tracks kind of always go up to the blowdown. So over the course of 39 days, he would get a little bit closer to the blowdown every day and kind of talk in a, just kind of nonsense, like you talk to a pet, right? Like, hello.
Like Grumpy Cat?
Aww.
Tim's I don't mean to interrupt your story, but Tim just said, he's still getting over the cold, but really, he was just up all night, really sad about Grumpy Cat.
So, he would approach, kind of like you talk to a pet, with a nice, gentle, calm voice, nothing loud, nothing frightening. So the idea is that the animals in the blowdown would get used to his voice, get used to his presence. So in his mind, it was a fisher den, right? And he didn't share this with me till the end of the story, and it's pretty neat, and you should definitely go back and read it. I think he titled it Tricked by a Fisher, but anyway, on like day 30, he was able to crawl up into the den, and then he said he looked up in there, or into the blowdown that became a den, and he said there was this big eye that opened up and looked at him. And then he came back to camp, and he said, "How big is a fisher cat?" So in what he had thought was happening was that these fishers had a little den in there, but what it really was a bear's den, a black bear den, a mother who had 2 cubs over the winter, and the fishers were just going and checking it out every couple of days as part of their routine. So he said he was able to crawl up into the den that day, and Christopher's shaking his head. And you should never try anything like this, right? Don't ever do this at home. This is a horrible idea. But he said he was able to reach out and like scratch the bear a little bit. So, and then we went back, I think 2 days later, and the bear had left the den. So we tracked it down a little ways, and the mother bear was just teaching the cubs. But I think, it could have ended very badly. It's a very bad idea to do that. But, it's an interesting story after the fact because nothing bad happened. Mm-hmm. That, the power of the sit spot, the power of routine, the power of going to the same place over and over again, and everything gets used to you. I think if he had been running around screaming like a crazy person approaching that, the outcome would have been much different. The bear probably would have left the den earlier and whatever. So, yeah. Nothing like that has happened since. We do have some, some great sit spot stories and great animal stories and stuff, but that's definitely the pick of the litter, so to speak.
Oh, for sure.
I'll link that in. You can read Peter in his own words as he describes the experience. So that going to a sit spot every day, that's a really good way to start to know a place. And I think it's the combination of academics and experiential. That's where you get to the sweet spot, right?
Yeah.
Because one without the other, if it's just academic, then it's an abstraction exercise where you're learning the names of things and learning about things, but you don't have an experiential scaffolding, if you will, to put that information into. Similarly, if you just go out and experience stuff, the end result is not as powerful as if you learn the names of the things and learn about the history of the things and the natural history and how they live and things of that nature.
Yeah, so we, like Tim mentioned at the beginning of the course, they're building they just finished building their first shelter, which is a hoop house. And for that, you need pretty specific types of saplings that you can bend and weave. And one of our students on this course had grabbed an aspen the first time and tried to bend it, and it broke. So he was worried that they would all do that, and had sort of so when we do the hoop houses, it's a sturdy ground frame that we can bend them through and around, and that's what gives it that nice kind of hoop shape. So he had stuck them through in sort of almost like a tent shape, and then walked over with him and kind of explained to him why we chose the woods that we did for this, and and then he and I bent the birch and maple, and he was awestruck that they could do this because with that first aspen tree, it had just snapped. And what that means is that that pairs with the academic studies that he's doing, because maybe the first time that you write about birch or maple, it's pretty, it's academic. It's all sort of hypothetical. About the shape of their leaves, the time of the year that they leaf out or the sap runs, but you don't have that sort of visceral understanding of what that wood is capable of. And once you've done something with it, like building a shelter or carving a canoe paddle, you have a really good understanding of the properties of that wood. And that wood is something that type of tree is something that you, from here on out, will look at and know its potential. And I think that that's another important part of living on a landscape, is knowing what works and what doesn't with which materials are around.
Right. In a university course, you could get some of the facts about the field botany of the saplings, but you need that experiential component like people get out here in order to know, hey, in addition to all the botanical facts, this is a good shelter pole because it's flexible.
Right.
This isn't because it'll snap. So it just adds a whole new depth of knowledge, depth of understanding to your surroundings.
Yeah, and they build on each other. So today, he knows that now not to use aspen. And today we're going to probably do quickie bows. And when we do that, I would be willing to bet that even if I didn't tell him which wood to select, he probably wouldn't select aspen because he understands that it doesn't bend. And I think that's, as you get more and more of this stuff, it builds on each other and allows you to take on harder and tougher projects. And I think that is a really cool aspect of it.
Makes me wonder how they build shelters in Aspen, Colorado. Right?
Well, they get a guy to hit two rocks together, so they've got a soundtrack. And then they just cut down a bunch of aspens and pile them on top of each other like a beaver lodge.
That's not... No, I've seen pictures. That's not what it looks like. It looks like a high-end ski resort.
Whoa. I don't think you can't prove to me that the entire population of aspen isn't beaver related.
All right. I don't even... I don't even know what's happening anymore.
Because I don't know what you're doing to me, and so I'm
lightheaded because I have a cold.
It's not a cold. You're sad about Grumpy Cat. Admit it.
I'm both. Why can't I be both? Well, I don't know. I'm completely out of ideas at this point. Like, my head is feels like a giant ball. So I think we're going to wrap this one up because we've got to go start our day. We're going to hit the water again today, do some poling through island rips on the other side of the island down on the river. It's still pretty cold out. The sun is not shining yet today, and maybe won't shine.
Haze of fog when I woke up this morning.
So
everywhere.
Hopefully no one swims.
Yep.
But thank you for spending this time with us. Thanks for your attention. And if you found this to be useful in any way, shape, or form, please leave us a review or share this with somebody or click on that little, star thingy that says that, I don't even know what it really says anymore.
That you're good.
Yeah.
Find your name, put a gold star by it.
So yeah, do that if you like this, do us that little favor.
Yeah. Another thing, we've said this a few times on the podcast, but if you guys have topics that you're interested in that we could talk about, send them to us because we have very little to say to each other anymore.
I have absolutely nothing to say. No,
exactly.
Anyway, and again, Grumpy Cat, if you're out there, this one's for you, little buddy. We miss you.
Yep.
Thanks. Have a great day. You have been listening to the Jack Mountain Bushcraft Podcast. For more information on our professional wilderness guide training programs that are college accredited and GI Bill approved, visit us on the web at jackmtn.com.